This is another night at the county. I don't know if you can see my feet sliding. But basically what you have here is absolute sheer ice. So I'm going to wait for a couple of minutes to see if I can get the salt to work, because if I start going down there and it hasn't worked, you're going to hear about me on the news. But this is probably as bad as I have ever seen it at the top of Shippey. It's a steep hill, so I just made it over the top. I was sideways and every which way but straight coming up. And I'm kind of waiting to see whether or not the salt works fast enough that I can actually get down this hill. It looks like there's a stripe beginning to develop, so I guess I'm probably going to have to go for it. And I don't know if you can see in the camera, but this is just absolutely a skating rink. Sucks. It's been a long day. Put the camera away and see if I can get down this hill in one piece. This top here still hasn't even begun to melt. It was just really about a half-inch thick ice there. Say that I'm comfortable about this? No. It's the life of a snowplow guy. If I can get down this hill, I'm going to turn around and come right back up and blast it so the guys in the morning don't have to deal with it. Well, it's not the nicest day we've had. For that matter, it's pretty much a muggy, hot, periods of showers kind of day. But I needed to get out here and complete one of the concepts that we had started, and that was that 52mm aftermarket top end. And it's based on a Hudzel short block with a top end, and I wrapped the Husqvarna X-Torque parts, at least the ones that were, you know, useful, around that saw. Concept being, you got a blown up 372 X-Torque, you know, with a bad set of bearings, and you don't have the tools to, or time or skill to tear it apart and put new bearings in it. And you go to aftermarket online and try to get a short block to wrap the plastic around it, because you can do that with simple tools. What do you end up with? So I kind of did that, and granted, we added a couple of other little twists and turns to the project, but I never did put it in the wood. And I have a 562 that needs to get tested, because I just finished putting it together. That's an ominous sign. And I have my old 925 where I had done some updates to that. So I want to just run all 4 saws. I think the only one I'm going to swap bars around with are the 2 puzzle-based saws. The rest of them I'm just going to run as they are. On the 562, it's a pretty fresh build, but that's the customer bar and chain, and it has plenty of time on it, but it does produce chips. And of course, the chain that's on the 925 is an it's an off-brand chain that's, you know, not the best. So neither one of those are really getting the best shake here, you know what I'm saying? They're sort of just going to run. And again, as all these cookie cut type tests, this is orders of magnitude. This is not meant to be some scientific one saw is faster than the other, but more an attempt to give you an idea of what these saws will run like, you know. should you end up with one. And of course, the big 800-pound gorilla in this whole thing is the chain. And since I'm not going to change bar and chains, I just don't have time to do that. I've got a bunch of other stuff I have to do. I have to stress yet again, this is just about orders of magnitude. Those chains are not the best. The only bar and chain I'm going to swap is between the two Hudzl or Pharmatech top end centered saws. That's it. The other ones I'm just going to run pretty much as they are. You know, and there's some realism in that, because I doubt very much a person who's out there hacking away in the woods trying to make a living is going to spend a whole bunch of time taking each of the saws out of his truck and swapping all the bars and chains to see which one's the fastest one to go before he goes out into the woods. What he's likely to do is take the configuration as it is, touch the chain up, and go cut. And I'm going to subtract just one part of that puzzle, and that's touching up the chains. We're just going to grab them as they are and let them go. Now, I can tell you the bar and chain that we're going to use for the Pharmatech, it's got a lot of time on it. It is not very sharp. And again, I just don't have time to touch it up today. But I did want to complete the video series. So, hope you enjoy. Again, orders of magnitude, not very scientific, and it's hot as hell, so I'm going to try to get it done as fast as I can. See, we got a bunch of test wood out here. This is mainly basswood. You know, it's considered a hardwood, but it's nothing like these. You know, the maples I have. And I got rid of, like that ash right there would be nice. I got rid of those trees here because it's a lower quality and I don't get a lot of money out of it. I can sell it for pallet wood, but that's about it. You know, and I get more value using it for a test log than I do anything else. So, alright, this is what I'm going to do, is I'm going to start out with a 562, and it literally doesn't have a tank through it. I just put it together, so this is as much to let it sort of run and self-tune as anything else. But it also has a chain which is less than desirable. So let's just see if it fires off easy. Now the second thing you need to know is it's a hot and humid day, so these saws will probably all run a little bit fat. But that doesn't matter because they are as they would be coming out of a truck. So let's start with a 562. See what it does on restart. Alright, let's go right to the 925. See if that thing will start. The only thing that comes to mind running this saw is, oh my God, I wish I had a good chain. Ha! how about this is the kit saw, basically from a box of parts. And I did a video with this one already a couple times, so you know this saw, so it's a good reference case. This is another saw where I'll tell you what, with a good chain, this thing would be a ripping saw. So let's try restart on a hot day. Now remember, that also has the aftermarket carburetor and everything, so I have to say that it ran quite well for, well, an aftermarket part saw, because that's about what it is. And I can't remember all the details. You'll have to go back to my other video, but I know I did have to sub in some OEM type parts, but for the most part that's all Farmertech. Alright, I'm going to change over the bar and chain to the big bore. Well, got the barn and chain swapped over, and it was easy in part because it has that internal clutch layout where the sprocket's sitting right out there in front where you can get to it easy. 372s are like that, the 385, 390 series are like that. A bunch of the steels are, you know. I happen to prefer that layout. It makes it a lot easier to do stuff like this in the woods. But now, I have to confess, when I changed that bar and chain over, I realized I put an 8-pin sprocket on the X-Torque converted to a big bore. Alright? So that may make a difference. That's the blem saw, because it was a blemished short block with a 52mm Farmertech top end. And I think I did deck that one. You'll have to go back to the video to see how much. Which means I didn't change the ports, which means its RPMs will be down. And to compensate, what I did is I put an 8-tooth sprocket on there. When you start cutting transfer port area, that means you start losing RPMs. But conversely, when you start increasing compression, you start increasing torque. Torque is a good thing. So that's why I changed the sprocket to the 8-tooth. And let's just see if it can pull it. Now the other thing is, I can tell you the kit saw, the Farmertech kit saw, that thing's beginning to wake up. It's beginning to break in and wake up. That is a strong saw. That is a legitimately strong saw. I know there will be people who like to, you know, denigrate the fact that it's a kit saw and all that, but the fact of the matter is, for the kind of money that thing costs, and if you have the time and skills, there's a lot of saw right there. Now the question is, how long will it last? And I hope to be able to answer the question on that series of kit saws, the same as I have with the MS660s. Now if you remember, I had to do a fair amount of work to get the MS660s reliable enough for a person to, you know, put a year on it. A solid year, not just firewood year, but I mean a person running it every day. And believe it or not, those 660s are still out there cutting wood. You know, no news is good news, and I haven't heard a thing from the fellow since April. And, you know, I'm assuming they're still out there cutting wood because I still have one of his saws. And when he wants his saws, he comes calling. So what I'll do now is I'm going to take a few cuts with that blem saw, X-Torque converted to aftermarket with a short block saw. I don't know what to call that thing. And I want to do a couple of heat cycles where I let it shut off, let it cool for a little bit, and take another couple of cuts and try to enhance its break-in. So I'm hoping it can pull the 8-tooth. There's a possibility it doesn't have enough oomph to pull that thing. You know? It is hot out. Fortunately, I'm not in the picture because I'm sweating like a pig. See what it does with restart. Well, I think I'll let the numbers speak for itself. But I tell you what, that's yet another saw. If I had a good chain, that thing would be really, really strong. The question is, how long does it last? You know? And that's before break-in. And that's also with a stock muffler with no modifications. I put a Hudzel muffler on that, let it break in, tune it right. And that's a very impressive machine right there for power. Now remember, there's a big difference between it runs good and cuts cookies, and it's a useful saw for a person with a business or even a farmer, because it has to last. And we have absolutely no idea how long that's going to last. Understand what I'm saying? So, again, this is the Blim saw, where it had a broken piece out the back of the short block, and it was rejected, and I ended up with it. And it has a 52mm top end. The one thing I see on this that I might do is I might go back to the X-Torque plastic to get a little more space on top of that cylinder, because that cylinder sits right up against that plastic, you know? And I wonder if it's eventually going to start melting that. I don't know. There's no room between the top of the big bore cylinder and the top of this this cover. But first impressions are it easily pulled the 8-pin. Easily pulled that 8-pin. Now I don't know whether or not the kit saw would have done the same. From the feel of it, it probably would have. And so what's the bottom line? Bottom line is this: if you go from an X-Torque OEM to that saw, where if you have a stock X-Torque OEM saw and you run that one, and all you care about is how fast it cuts cookies, that thing there will not disappoint you. Now, I have to say it again, and I'll say it again and again and again. That doesn't make it a better saw. because it has not survived the test of time. We don't know how long it'll run like that. I mean, it could run for a week, it could run for a year, it could run for 3 years. I just don't know. And until it proves itself with reliability, it's not something that I can recommend. And I know that may sound a little bit frustrating to some of you who want me to make a recommendation. I can't, because I just simply have no idea on how long these are going to last. Now, I've had some big bore cylinders from 4 or 5 years ago. They still run, and those would have been legitimate, but I'm starting at a much later point in time, not with a track record on how they last in the current configuration. And also the cases, I've never had a set of cases like this before with their bearings. So this will be the first 2 of these saws in the 372 configuration. This one and the kit saw right here, where I've actually run the Farmer Tech cases, crank, and bearings. So this is new to me. Hope you understand. And that's why I have the hesitation and reservation, because I just simply don't know. I have to say the initial impression is pretty impressive. It's pretty nice. So I'm rambling. What I'm going to do now is let that cool for a little bit. I'm going to run the 562 and put it on a heat cycle and take some more cuts. Then I'm going to do the same with this. So back to the 562. Hot start. It's had a chance to cook now. One more time with the blend saw. Wow. Well, first impressions, like I said before, is that is definitely a strong saw, no doubt. So if the first 4 cuts are an indication about that saw, and that's all it is, that first indication is pretty damn good. So anyway, let me go back and cut this up and edit it. And I think the 2 saws would suffer the most because of the weather conditions. That poor 925, I have to retune that for these hotter, more humid conditions. And that saw, although I was able to tune that, and you could tell it made a big difference. So the auto tune, it runs pretty good, doesn't it, for a 60cc saw? You know? Talk to you later. Bye for now. Hope you enjoy.